Everybody, welcome back. We are here today, gathered round, because Rooster Teeth and all their infinite glory, alright, I might be buttering it a bit too thick, but basically, Rooster Teeth put out 4 pre-show World of Remnants throughout the week, each one on a different kingdom. So, I decided to wait until all 4 were done, because they were each pretty short, and put them all into one video that I'll put out before my episode 1 review. So, let's get started. The first video was Vale. Now, right off the bat, I think I need to talk about our new narrator, Crow. Just as good as Osmond, maybe a little more cynical, but I think that's what I like the most about him. If I could compare his narration style to anything or anyone, it would actually be something very recent. Anyone who is a Civilization fan would know in Civilization 6, Sean Bean is the new narrator. And while I haven't had a chance to actually play the game, I really want to play that game. I've watched a lot of previews and a lot of people playing it on Twitch, and it just reminds me so much of Civ 6, just like the top-down view and the gritty sort of voice doing the narration for World of Remnants and Civilization 6. And talking about staring at maps, World of Remnants cartography is just as good as it was before, but they've taken a step backwards in the animation department on this series of World of Remnants. But let me explain on how that might not be a bad thing. I think the art actually looks better overall when they don't have as many moving points on the actual characters in it. Like, the maps look beautiful, they always have. The background's been painted beautifully, they always have. But when you get the characters moving around, like I remember the Hunters one, the joints always had these weird, really stabby, pointy parts. You could put somebody's eye out with those, but no more pointy elbows and joints because of that weird paper puppet look they had before. It's now almost more reminiscent to the charcoal paintings like in Yang's flashback in Season 2's Burning the Candle. Story time. Starting out with Vale, our first video gives us a quick rundown of the world, but in the end focuses on Vale. So before we focus on Vale, I just also want to mention, sorry, I keep on going in other directions, but these little things interest me. When Crow is talking about the overworld, he also mentions Menagerie. Menagerie, he says that the Faunus have it, and it's not considered a kingdom. His words, the Faunus have it, but it's not a kingdom. That would technically be a 5th kingdom if it was. Now, is that because the rest of the world don't respect the Faunus? Because technically, if they have their own government, they took over that landmass. Because originally, it was a reservation. So if they took that over and they had a government, and we'll learn later on that different kingdoms have less of a government than you would think that they should to be a kingdom, then why is this one not a kingdom? And I personally think it's probably because of the bias towards the Faunus. Because again, as I said, it was a reservation before the Faunus uprising. The humans pushed them all in there, and now it's like its own country. And something else on top of that. If you look at a little bit north of Menagerie's mainland mass, you'll see there's a couple of little yellow cities that dot just right above it there. That kind of makes me believe, it leads me to believe that that might be captured territory after the revolution. My theory on that, and I say theory a lot, I'm sorry, is that might actually be Fort Castle that was lost by the human general Lagune that we learned about in Oobleck's history class back in Season 1. Okay, that was a longer tangent than expected. 2 long tangents. I'm sorry. Alright, moving on to Vale. So basically, the secret to Vale's success is it has natural borders on either side. Steep mountains to the east and shallow waters to the west. This is something I actually didn't realize. before they actually had this World of Remnant. I knew about the mountains. They were mentioned several times during the Mountain Glen episodes, but not the ocean barrier. Not that it really mattered in the end. Speaking of Mountain Glen, it gets a slight nod as Crow mentions that any settlements that go any further inland past the mountains are pretty well doomed. At the end, Crow mentions everyone is worried after the fall of Beacon, which stands to reason that Vale as a kingdom still stands, thus, although weakened because its academy is gone, but it still stands because we saw Patch was at least okay, and he mentions Patch as being part of Vale, so most likely a good portion of the city of Vale still stands as well. Well, hopefully. Moving on to Mistral, we find out from our narrator Crow that while this is the kingdom with the most territory and the most diversity, it is also the one with the darkest, biggest underworld black market, thieves and crooks. Also, the so-called home of Cinder and Emerald, well, it's at least where she announced she was from. They lived in the cliffsides and, by the art, took advantage of the wind currents that Crow mentioned to build some very nostalgic Final Fantasy-looking airships. Also, a bit more on the art here. Remember the last episode review I did? Remember when I mentioned a certain painting that caught my eye in RWBY's room? Very cliff-like looking here, isn't it? Most likely actually a painting of Mistral, but why would this be in Tai Yang's home? That might not actually be even RWBY's room anymore. Maybe it's even like his room that he put her in because it would be more comfortable. I don't know. But either way, I think that painting is originally from Mistral, and he brought it there himself. I think Tai Yang's Outlaw is originally from Mistral based on these two pictures. That's my theory. And, well, hey, it's only a theory. I don't have that much solid evidence aside from this painting, but it is said in one of the other World of Remnant episodes that hunters can and do leave their original kingdoms behind once they're done training. And let's say maybe he starts traveling and he makes his way to Vale and then meets Raven, has a kid, settles down, gets dumped. You know the story. Again, only a theory, but his kind of style matches a little bit, especially like his tattoo he has on his arm. It kind of matches what the art also is in this World of Remnant for Mistral, but we're gonna have to wait to find that out. Lastly, before we move on to the next kingdom, Crow mentions two more cities. They're sort of like further away from the eye of the council, he says, meaning they are further away from the law. Now, why mention these two cities? Yes, Patch got a nod last episode when talking about Vale. That's where Yang and RWBY are from, so it makes sense to name drop in that sense. So, would it make sense that the reason why he's name dropping in this instance and not any other cities in some of the other World of Remnants is because either somebody we know or knew is from one of those two cities? Hey. Alright, moving on. Atlas. For the youngest kingdom, it has the most interesting history thus far. Its harsh and cold conditions forcing its people to be just better than most, just to survive. Crow says they advanced the quickest with the technology to show for it. But the art also shows that below the surface, there is dust readily available for them to mine. Their school, also named Atlas, kind of looks like it would be a technological paradise. And I really, really hope we get to see Atlas itself on one of Weiss's scenes, because obviously I kind of took a look at the intro before the whole episode. It's very, no spoilers. We all know Weiss is up there, but I really do hope that we maybe see her walking around the Atlas Academy, because I really want to see how much it differs from Atlas. I want to see all the academies, but this one interests me the most. And we know she's up there because she's obviously there with dear old daddy. And speaking of Mr. Schnee, I love how in this piece here, he is slightly hiding behind Torchwick. Well, that was a Freudian slip. I meant to say Ironwood here, not Torchwick. He is standing behind Ironwood. Sheesh. Just behind his back. Kind of like that little corporate voice that is telling the government what to do. It really shows that the military here is backed by big business, or as Crow puts it, R&D. History-wise, long story short, Mantle became Atlas. Basically, not just after the last war, it was more or less when Atlas the Academy became this huge symbol of prosperity for the people of Mantle, that everybody moved there and built an entire city around the Academy. Everyone eventually leaving the city of Mantle behind to move to Atlas, thus the new kingdom name becoming Atlas after the name of the Academy and the new city. The scary thing is, it's kind of indicative of what's happening in certain cities across North America. Old mining, coal cities, heck, even parts of bloody Detroit. It's very interesting what Crow said. It was the coldest winter they ever knew. That means that not everybody left the old city of Mantle. There were those that were probably too poor to move to the new shining city of Atlas and got left behind. Like, who knows what was left behind? Like, would they even pick up their infrastructure? Could there be no like dust crystals left to power the city? Thus, no heating, maybe even no running water in what's left of this old abandoned city? That's kind of scary. That's kind of sad too. That, well, they do that to their own people. Like, we know that Mantle / Atlas has already got a pretty bad reputation just for the Third War, but then you have the Schnee Dust Company, which represents a lot of Atlas, that just like so well known for their their abuse of faunus. But again, I am ranting. Eventually, I wonder even if maybe nowadays that Mantle is completely gone, maybe overtaken by snow dunes. It's possible maybe that there's even just only the high rises sticking out and like hundreds of feet of snow already built up. Trust me, snow dunes, they get high, people. On to our last kingdom now. Basically, it was an oasis in a desert that eventually got taken over by the other kingdoms. Most notably Atlas and the Schnee Dust Company. This is where I think the majority of the faunus hate for the Schnees come from. Not just, like, we even know that Flint Coal dislikes the Schnee Dust Company, so not only do they mess with humans, as we probably can tell from like Flint and what happened to the old city of Mantle, and now this, we can see just by the art that there are faunus here that were probably forced to be slave laborers in these very camps that we are seeing now. It's very interesting to note that the Academy here, Shade, is basically the government too. While the closest thing they had to a government, they didn't really respect and pretty well tore it down. And to be honest, I don't blame them. That was a good bit of history on all the kingdoms. I'm sorry I didn't go like, point by point, but I just kind of wanted to only talk about the things that I found really interesting. Yeah, I know I kind of breezed over the fact that like Shade is like only the strong survive, but we kind of already know that about their personalities. I was really more interested on how those are Schnee Dust Company symbols on all those buildings there. Slave labor, here we go. In the end, after all that little bit of history, Crow sort of has his own little soliloquy at the end, and he drops a very important little bit of information on present affairs. Ozpin is still missing, at least to Crow. And for somebody like Crow to not know where Ozpin is, Crow was the one Ozpin would send out to find things, to find people. So if Crow can't find him, he's pretty deep into wherever or whatever he's into right now, if he still exists and not a little pile of ash like somebody else we know. That was too soon. I just kind of hurt myself there. Well, that's it. By the time you're watching this, I'm pretty sure the first episode of Volume 4 will be up. So I hope you're all enjoying that. I know as soon as I'm done editing this, I'm going to go and watch that. I've seen a little bit of the previews and the intro already, and it's, I'm so hyped. I'm so hyped. Ah, my God, the intro looks so good. There's so many new characters in the intro, too. Oh, and Blake, yar, her, fiddly-dee, being a part with us, all right with me? I was right. Oh, that's something I should say for episode 1, but if those of you that stayed this late to see that, just take that as a little preview. All right, until next time, everybody, good night!